Hi, I'm Rob Lytzki, and I would like to share with you some insights of what I believe is the most incredible journey of life that a man or a woman can undertake. And that is the transforming journey of spirituality from the darkness of original sin towards the light of life, or as I've titled it, Light versus Dark. From John 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made, and without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all people. How the light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. Now, according to the scientific world, half of a child's physical DNA, or the genetic makeup, comes from the father, and the other half from the mother. However, the scientific world bases its assumptions upon tangible, empirical evidence, and allows no understanding of the spiritual realms, because to them it cannot be quantified, the same as intuition can't be quantified, but they seem to give some credence to that. I'll put it to you that the DNA or genetic makeup of the soul or spirit of life comes from the Lord, and this is the light of life, or the power that gives life to life, the same as an engine needs petrol to give it life. We were created and given life through Christ. Imagine this little child is you. Just come onto this earth, just been born. Have a look. How beautiful, how innocent, how sensitive, how vulnerable. Nothing is going on with this little child. No malice, no anger, no envy, no hatred, no jealousy, and as yet, no judgment. Just a beautiful little gift waiting to be nurtured. Every child is born with this inner beauty that needs to be nurtured so that they can mature into a healthy adult. And when I say every child, I mean every child. You are not an exception to the created order of the universe. You were not born bad. Now, primary nurture is imparted to the child through bonding heart to heart, soul to soul, spirit to spirit, or love to love. Please know that I use these different terms to describe the exact same thing. Essentially, by this I mean the true love of the spirit of life in both parents, bonding with the spirit of life within their child. Secondary nurture is imparted to the child through the five senses: seeing, touching, tasting, hearing and smelling. It's through these five senses that a child learns and experiences the tangible realities of this world. It is the role of both parents to impart the full value and identity to the child by nurturing the child's five senses through love. Now, love is the purest form of the expression of life, or to understand it more clearly, it is the sixth sense of our being, imparting his heart to heart, instructing his head to head. If only parents understood this responsibility before they had children, there would not be so many dysfunctional families. The trouble is, they can't sow into their children what they did not receive themselves. It's meant to be the role of the father to impart the true identity to the child, whether a boy or a girl. And this must be role modelled by the father in his relationship with the mother, by the way he treats and respects her, so that the child understands and finds security in their God-given sexuality and gender. Imagine if a little girl witnessed as she grew up was her mother or sisters being treated harshly and disrespected by their father and brothers. How could she possibly understand and grow into her true identity and value as a woman in that environment? Or if a little boy was to grow up in the same environment, how would he ever learn and understand the true value and beauty of women and how to nurture a true relationship with them? The tragedy of poor role modelling by parents, as this is handed on down through the generations. So, as a newborn child, we arrive on this planet with a little heart of gold. And when I use the word heart, I'm referring to the spiritual or sixth sense of our being, not the emotional aspect of our being. A little heart, soul or spirit of expectation with a longing for true acceptance. That is, if you were born into a perfect world, an ideal world, the world God created for his children. It was meant to be a safe environment, as I said, with both parents imparting the identity and value to the child through their love with the child. Unfortunately, There are far too many single-parent families in this day and darkened age. Well, let's start at the beginning. You see this little child's heart? It beats for love, joy, peace, truth, goodness, faithfulness and innocence. It's all there if you like. The seed of the Spirit that was sown in you before you were born. While you're still in your mother's womb, you were created in this image. This little heart is a pure thing, and as I said, it has an inherent expectation that it will be nurtured and loved so that in maturity it will bear the fullness of the fruit of the Spirit. However, we're not born into a perfect world. We're born into an imperfect world, a world of sin, an unsafe environment. We're born into imperfect families. Very soon we start to experience or witness all sorts of abuse. Emotional, spiritual, physical, sexual. We might grow up in a family where there are a lot of lies and anger. The house runs on insults with a lot of tension, creating insecurity and rejection. Or there could be addictions or mental health issues in the family. Sometimes a lot of violence, hatred. There could even be incest. Or the most common and in many ways the most damaging form of abuse on this planet, neglect. As a little child grows, the darkness begins to spread, even before the child can form a sentence or take its first step. This darkness becomes the foundation of the child's worldviews and self-worth. Year after year, the heart is denied the love and light of life it needs so desperately to help it grow. Now, unhealthy people impart darkness over your identity. Unfortunately, these things come into the child's life through those who are meant to love and nurture them. Primary exposure to life is your father, mother, brothers, sisters, aunties or uncles, grandpa, grandma. Sometimes, despite their best intentions, the pain and darkness of their hearts impacts our life and we grow up with these black spots covering our heart. Then we go into school and sometimes experience more shame, blame and guilt through peer group pressure of other children or from teachers as we try to measure up and fit into a world we do not understand. Then we enter into puberty and begin to learn about the opposite sex. Maybe a relationship with a boyfriend or a girlfriend leaves us even more wounded or confused. Then out into the workforce, where we're exposed to the acceptance and value judgments of workmates and bosses, trying by now to act like an adult and find our place in this thing called society. And as life unfolds, we enter into marriage, only to find that our spouse has their own issues and is incapable of healing and nurturing us according to our damaged needs. I wonder, why do so many people try to rely on their partner to fulfill them or make them complete? Darkness creeps into our life through so many people in so many different ways until it becomes so complete we lose touch with the true identity we were born with. We become desensitised and no longer in touch with the sixth sense of our spirituality that was planted within us. As I said, it is covered over by the darkness at a very young age. And many people live their entire lives without knowing anything about the spiritual aspect of their being and the joy of growing into a spiritually mature adult. Eventually, the darkness becomes so complete, our heart begins to cry out against life and the injustice of it all. We start to wonder whether we're becoming emotionally dead, spiritually dead. We grow up with distorted worldviews from the pain and suffering that we experience. We become untrusting of others and we lose our self-worth, our identity, and we may even develop mental health issues, depression, anxiety, to name a few. We definitely start to form unhealthy relationships because as our self-worth diminishes, we're more likely to choose friends and partners who will treat and respect us according to the view that we have of ourselves and of the world, which in turn pushes us further into the darkness. Sometimes the pain is so great and our self-worth has become so decimated that we may even become suicidal. no longer able to bear the pain. We begin to filter everything through life's pain because, as the darkness spreads, we no longer hear and see through the eyes and ears of our heart, as the light of life seems to fade. But we start to conform to the ways of this sinful world into which we were born, living according to the attitudes and behaviours that were formed in and by the darkness. As it is written in Matthew 13, in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You'll be ever hearing, but never understanding. You'll be ever seeing, but never perceiving. This people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. But all this pain and suffering that has gone on in our life blinds us from the true love that was born in us. It is earthly life itself that has created the darkness around our heart and caused it to become hardened and calloused. However, saying all that, where there is life, there is hope, even in the seemingly darkest of lives. Where there is hope, we see that love can rekindle the spirit. In this we need to understand there are many characteristics to this purest form of love that strips away the darkness and restores our ability to once again hear and see through our spiritual hearts. As the heart receives forgiveness, so it is free to forgive, and this begins to restore our emotional life. As we receive grace, we learn to be graceful, and hope grows. As the fruit of the Spirit grows to maturity, so we mature spiritually. And as we experience mercy, we learn the beauty of being merciful. The healthier the heart becomes, the healthier our worldviews become. And through acceptance, hope grows. We learn again to trust. We start to understand that our self-worth is based on our true identity and not on the lies we have been told and have accepted. It's a beautiful thing to find a life and a heart without judgment. And as hope grows, we find faith. The more the darkness fades, the more our mental health is restored, as we find peace of mind and rest for our souls. As we become healthier, we form healthier relationships, and as we find freedom to embrace life through the truth. Now these three things remain: faith, hope and love, and the greatest of all these is love. It is within this that our relationship with the Father of the Spirit is restored. And as love grows through the darkness, we become refined and redefined. We find that the true heart that was always within us was being refined through the trials and tribulations of our life. Nothing is wasted. Our heart is becoming refined pure gold, and we begin once again to see and hear through the eyes and ears of our hearts. It's always a matter of the heart, spirit or soul changing and growing as we turn to face the truth of life. And that is, we are meant to grow through truth and love, not lies and hatred. I tell you the truth, the spirit of life or soul is in all reality impervious to the darkness. I'll say it again. The heart, spirit of life or soul is impervious to the darkness and will lay dormant in the person until it is born again. Yeah, that's what I said, born again. Now I know a lot of people have preconceived ideas about what born again is, or they can get tangled up with the stigma of it. I would ask that just for the moment you lay all that aside and consider it from this point of view. You see, there's this plant called the Townsville stylo, and the seed of the Townsville stylo will lay dormant year upon year, decade upon decade in the desert wilderness until the season is just right for its survival, and then sprout and yield its fruit according to the season. In other words, the seed has life, but does not sprout through the hardened husk that surrounds it, just like the darkness around our heart stops us from growing. Only then it is born again and becomes the beautiful plant it was created to be in the beginning. Well, how does a caterpillar transform into a butterfly without going through the complete process of change? A caterpillar that only learns about butterflies will not become a butterfly. It'll just become a clever caterpillar and remain crawling on the earth. For a person to be born again, they must also take the journey of the process of change. As I said before, worldviews, beliefs, mental health, wounded emotions that must be healed, as we learn to see and hear and love through our sixth sense or spirit of life. It's through this process that we discover this love that is growing inside us. And we become very precious in nurturing it, because this is the love that defines who we were truly created to be. And as we grow, the eyes and ears of our hearts grow in maturity. Again, from the prophecy of Isaiah. But blessed are your eyes, because they see, and your ears, because they hear. I tell you the truth, many prophets and righteous people long to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it. This is because they hear and see through the eyes and ears of darkness and religion, and not through a relationship with the Creator. Just a word of caution here, so we do not hinder our growth. One of the greatest dangers of the journey of discovering who we truly are is to keep looking over our shoulder at the past and nurturing the wounds that we have received or inflicted. Often, due to the pain we've received, we build up personality, behaviours and attitudes that keep us from attracting healthy people around us, by always treating them as if they only want to inflict more pain on us. And, as protection, we learn to push them away. In all reality, this will just draw us back into the darkness. Now, sometimes it can be addictions in life that keep us from finding our true value. Alcohol, drugs, dieting, sex, shopping, pokies. No matter what the addiction is, it's just an anaesthetic for the pain that we've accumulated in our life. It does not heal or set us free. As you know, once a moment has passed, the pain returns, often bringing with it more shame, blame and guilt. In order to move forward, we might need to reevaluate our relationships with partners, family and friends, and consider the true value of the relationship and whether or not it is nurturing us and a blessing to us on our journey of life, or is their company once again contaminating the new life that we are discovering. Sometimes by remaining in a relationship with the wrong person or partner stirs up the emotional wounds of the past. Not all the issues of life are reconciled and healed straight away, so we need to keep our hearts and mental health safe as we continue on our journey. Sometimes the bondage of the past is so subtle we don't even recognise it, as the darkness hides itself behind the different shades of grey, where hope fades, love fades, peace fades, joy fades. The darkness can spread again across our heart, and our world once more become a desolate wilderness. However, we need to know that although we have been given new life and new opportunity, we were never just innocent victims in all of this. In our own way, have we not hurt others, our family or friends, maybe a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or a husband or a wife? Maybe even despite our best intentions, we have neglected or hurt our children by our own lack of understanding in the darkness. Now, if we want this all to stop, now is the time to take an inventory of life and be accountable for the darkness and pain that we've inflicted on others. I suppose the big question of life is, how can we turn it around after so many years of nurturing and being nurtured by this darkened world? Well, a major piece to the puzzle of unlocking this prison of darkness is to understand forgiveness. As we would like to be forgiven for what we have done wrong, so we need to forgive others for what they have done to us. It's impossible for our heart to be free if we hold others guilty for what they have done. Doesn't it just make us prison warders of unforgiveness, whereby we don't actually leave the prison of shame, blame and guilt? We stay there, so those who have hurt us can't escape. There's no freedom in doing that. Forgiveness does not mean that what has been done was okay. It's not okay. Sometimes the things that people inflict upon each other is nothing short of an atrocity and will always be considered wrong. It's not about setting them free for what they have done to us. It's about setting ourselves free from judgment and unforgiveness towards them. To hold them in prisoner in the darkness of our heart only holds our heart in darkness. And I can tell you from bitter experience, like a cancer, it grows. To understand the spiritual reality, forgiveness is what is known as an immutable imperative. In other words, this is decreed by the Spirit of love as the way to keep love pure. The light will not tolerate this darkness. It has been this way from the beginning of creation and will remain until heaven and earth pass away. Imperative? Because by not forgiving, we are the ones nurturing the cancer of unforgiveness. The two cannot abide together. This is not negotiable, for as it is written, for if you forgive others when they sin against you, so will your heavenly Father forgive you. If you do not forgive others their sin, nor will your heavenly Father forgive yours. I talk with many families who outwardly appear to be Christians, but hold on to unforgiveness. Sibling against sibling, sons and daughters against fathers and mothers against their own children, even grandchildren against grandparents, and vice versa. Sometimes even taking it through to the grave, refusing the beauty of love's healing and reconciliation, never understanding that they are the ones role modelling and imparting this darkness to their children, and so on down through the generations. Do not judge, or you too will be judged, for in the same way you judge others, you too will be judged. And the measure you use will be measured against you. Again, this is non-negotiable. And if we want to grow the gold, or as the world puts it, inner child that is within us, we need to understand this. We must be neither debtors nor creditors whilst holding the scales of justice. From Ephesians 4. So I tell you this and insist upon it in the Lord. You must no longer live as the Gentiles do, in the futility of their thinking, for they are darkened in their understanding and separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, due to the hardening of their hearts. Righto, so far this presentation has come from my personal reflections, or, if you like, my inner diary of my own journey from dark towards the light, and the truth and love I have found along the way, and I hope to discover so much more as my journey of life unfolds. Looking back over my life, to be honest, I didn't even know there was a spiritual aspect of my being, or a sixth sense of spirituality. I grew up in darkness and only turned to find a way out at the age of 40 when I couldn't take any more of life's pain, and I wanted nothing more than my own death to bring an end to it. Going back to the start, at the age of 5, my parents separated and I moved to Queensland with my mum and younger brother Richard. We moved around to different schools and suburbs for the next 2 years as mum tried to find a place to settle down, eventually stopping at a place called Wynnum North, just near Moreton Bay. The school was a lonely place for me. I never did fit in. I didn't get along with the other kids at school, and the teachers certainly didn't get along with me. I wagged school a lot and became a loner. My mum was a barmaid and not home much. So I wandered the streets and started to break into shops and work sites and houses. By the time I left primary school, I'd been to children's court 6 times and came very close to getting locked up and found myself on extended probation orders until I was 21. Anyway, I left school when I was 14 and got a job in a foundry for a whole $16 a week, where I met a guy who's older than me and had a car. We would go out drinking at discos and bands until one night he tried to molest me. You know, I was a pretty messed up kid before that, but quickly found the only way to block out the shame, blame and guilt of life was to get drunk to hide my secret. I thought nobody would like me if they knew what had happened. Some say I was an alcoholic by the time I was 15. Alcohol turned to marijuana, then to injecting speed and heroin. In the end, it didn't matter what I took or how much I drank or who I hurt, just as long as I didn't have to face the darkness that was inside me. Over the next 20 years, I drank and drugged my way through 2 marriages and had to bury 2 of my children. My little girl Joy at the age of 6 months from a cot death, and my son Ricky, who I lost at the age of 9 through a boating accident. It didn't matter what happened in my life, I'd just get smashed. I hated life, I hated myself, and I turned that hatred towards everything and everyone else. To cut a long story short, I was introduced to Christ at the age of 40, and so began my journey of recovery and discovery. When I say discovery, I mean I had to find new understandings of my preconceived ideas and beliefs about the church and Christians and what I thought it was all about, and commit myself to the journey of change if I didn't want to keep repeating the past, and finally come alive. Now, this is a very personal and internal journey. I met many people who tried to depersonalise this by attributing their journey to a higher power, or they call it spiritual enlightenment. And in a way, they're partially right. But until they recognise God as the Father of the Spirit, they will not enter into a relationship with Him. This is another thing in life that's not negotiable. If your heart's desire is to find true freedom, it can only be found through a relationship with the Spirit of love. This gold, or the Spirit of life, soul or love that I talk about, is a gift from God to fallen mankind. The only way to restore the relationship between ourselves and God the Father is to believe in the Son, Jesus Christ. As it says in John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son, that whoever believes in Him shall not perish, but have eternal life." For God did not send His Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through Him. In a nutshell, John 3:19 says, "This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light, because their deeds were evil." The Lord is willing to forgive you and set you free, because your deeds were committed in darkness, but He created you to live in and through the light of life. I've found the promises of the Lord faithful, and I can give living testimony of the change He's brought into my heart and life. Don't be like me and waste your life hiding in the prison of darkness. Invite the Father of your spirit to set you free and live in the light of love and transforming life. Amen.